Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight, you're not a knight, not a priest, and certainly not anyone the chroniclers will bother to name. You're something lower, something far more useful. You're the one they call when the screaming stops, when the body cools, when the door creaks open and no one else dares step inside. You're a gravedigger in a forgotten English town where the earth is hard, the sky is grey, and the stench never really goes away. The year is 1348, and a sickness is coming, black, fast and hungry. You don't know it yet, but soon the ground you dig will swallow more than you can count. Before the pits fill and your hands forget what clean smells like, do me a small favour. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. It's oddly comforting to hear who's tuning in from around the world. If you'd like early access to more of these slow, grim journeys through the past, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find the Patreon link in the description. But for now, lie back, get comfortable, let's begin. You're digging a shallow grave for a thief no one claims. He was hanged just after sunrise, outside the south gate, where the birds gather and the dogs sniff with more curiosity than fear. His face is still slack, tongue swollen, neck bent unnaturally where the rope crushed it. You don't look too long. He's just another one, another nameless body at the edge of things. The earth here is soft, loamy, easier to break with the shovel than near the churchyard. That's something at least. They told you to put him in without prayers. No procession, no bell. He stole bread and wine from the cellar of the inn, they said. And maybe something worse from the stable boy. You didn't ask. That's not your place. You're not a priest, not a clerk. You dig, you bury, you move on. There's no time or need to think about what a man did before he ended up in your hands. All roads lead to the same ditch in the end. The grave is shallow because they don't pay you enough to dig it deeper. And because it's just one man, the lone dead are easier than the bundles. You've had to take two at once before, when winter came hard and the children froze in their sleep. Those you wrapped together in burlap, tied at the feet like firewood. This one, you roll in with a grunt and a sigh, cover with earth until the flies disappear, then mark the spot with a crooked stake that will fall the next time the wind shifts. No name, no stone, just another patch of turned soil in a world too full of them. You keep to yourself mostly. People know you, but not really. They see the shovel. They smell the dirt. They nod and pass by. You're not welcome in the tavern, not really. Even when you've coin. You drink alone, if you drink at all. The barmaid winces when you come in, not from fear, but from pity, which is worse. You eat near the hearth with your back to the door, and you leave before the loot starts. No one wants you lingering. You're the reminder that everything ends in a hole. The priest tolerates you, though he doesn't look you in the eye. He blesses the corpses, when he can be bothered, but leaves the rest to you. Sometimes, he's too drunk to show up. Other times, he says the rites from the steps and leaves before the final clod of dirt lands. You understand. You're a necessary thing, but no one likes to watch the meat go into the ground. Your cottage is small and crooked, on the far end of the village, down a path the children avoid. That's fine. You'd rather not hear them laughing anyway. You sleep on straw, and you don't bother patching the roof when it leaks. There are always more pressing things, more urgent holes. You don't dream often, but when you do, it's always the same. The sound of shovels, over and over, metal on stone, metal on bone, until the dirt begins to laugh. The work is constant, but not overwhelming. Not yet. A good week brings just one or two bodies. An old man from the cider orchard. A girl who fell in the stream. Sometimes it's a traveller, sick from bad shellfish or stabbed over dice. You know most of them, at least a little. You saw them in the square once, heard them speak. Now they're cold and heavy, and you try not to remember the colour of their eyes. One evening, in early summer, a tanner's apprentice mentions something strange while passing you in the lane. You're carrying a sack of lime for a burial, and he wrinkles his nose at the smell, but doesn't step aside. Instead, he says, "You heard what's happening down south?" You grunt. That's your usual answer. Most people take it as agreement and move on. He doesn't. Dead by the dozen, he says. Near the coast, Southampton maybe, or Portsmouth. Some ship came in with sick men, black spots on the neck, bubbling lumps. Said they coughed until their lungs burst. That's what I heard anyhow. You look at him. Not fully, just enough to see the gleam of excitement in his eyes. Like it's a story, not a warning. Like it's something to pass on with a smirk. The way boys talk about devils in the woods. He laughs, shrugs, and walks away. You finish your errand, you forget the boy. Until 2 days later, when the baker's wife whispers to her sister that 4 children died in London in the same night. All from the same street, no fever, no warning. Just bled out, blackened, and stiff before the cock crowed. You hear more scraps after that. A merchant in town claims he lost 2 clients to a sudden sickness in Bristol. A monk riding north stops to buy ale and says half the convent where he stayed had taken ill. God's punishment, he mutters, eyes low, for pride, for lust, for greed. You notice something shifting in the air. Not the wind, the mood. People speak in quieter tones. The market thins. Pilgrims stop arriving. The town bell rings more often, not for mass, but for death. The priest's robes look less white. His voice cracks on the Latin. The sacristan goes missing. They say he went to see his brother in York, or fled. You suspect the latter. One evening, you see smoke on the horizon. Not the soft plume of a chimney, but the dark, angry coil of something larger. Someone says it's a farmhouse burned down. Another says it was set alight to keep the sickness away. A third says nothing and closes his shutters. You ask no questions. You dig still. The graves come more often now. An old washerwoman, a stable hand, a newborn with no name. You start using more lime. You wash your hands, though you don't know why. It doesn't help with the smell. Then one morning, as you wait outside the chapel for a delivery of shrouds, the town bailiff approaches. A man who's never spoken to you directly before. He has a red cloth tied over his nose and mouth. Like a thief, but he still stinks of sweat and fear. He says the bishop's courier came through at dawn, brought news. The plague is moving north, fast, not just rumours now, real deaths. Whole towns emptied, graves left open, ships rotting at anchor, full of bodies. It's not just bad air, not just sin, it's something else, something worse. You nod, though your stomach tightens. He says the lord of the manor has ordered the roads watched. No one in, no one out. You doubt that will help. The bailiff doubts it too, but says it anyway, because something must be said. That night, you sit on the edge of your cot staring at your hands. The nails are rimmed in soil. Your palms are cracked. You flex your fingers, and the joints ache. You think about the birds, the dogs, the clouds that move too quickly. You think about how soft the ground was for the thief, and you wonder how long it will stay that soft. The summons comes one evening at dusk, just as you're finishing a shallow trench behind the chapel, for an old mason who died coughing blood. You don't think much of it. The priest calls on you often, sometimes just to shift bones or refill the lime barrel. You wipe your hands on your tunic and trudge toward the manse, shovel still slung over one shoulder. He's waiting at the gate, wringing his hands the way he does before sermons, face drawn tight beneath his cowl. He doesn't speak until you're close enough to smell the wine on his breath. It's the merchant's wife, he says. Marjorie. You nod. You know her, everyone does. She used to sell ribbons in the square, always wore too much colour, and laughed too loudly for someone her age. Not that it matters now. You ask no questions, only follow him to the house at the corner of the green, where the shutters are closed and the front stoop is stained dark at the edges. There's a bucket near the door, brimming with cloudy water and flies. Inside, the smell hits first. Not the familiar staleness of death or the earthy rot of an overdue corpse. This is sharper, wet and sour, clinging to the walls like mould. The room is dim, but you can see the smear on the floorboards. a trail leading from the hearth to the cot. You follow it with your eyes before you see her. She's crumpled beneath a blanket, limbs rigid, jaw slack. Her skin is blotched with purple and black. Her eyes are open. The merchant stands in the corner, shaking. He keeps his back pressed to the wall, as if afraid she might reach up and grab him. He doesn't speak. He won't come near. The priest mutters a prayer under his breath, barely audible over the buzz of flies, then gestures to you. Your job has not changed, just the body. You lift her gently, but she's wet through, her nightdress soaked with something that sticks to your fingers. Not blood, not entirely, something thicker. You try not to breathe through your nose. Her stomach is swollen, her neck darkened with something that looks like bruising, but wrong. Like something underneath pushing up to the surface. Her armpits, too, are lumpy. You've seen boils before, but never like this. These are bulbous and black seeping fluid even as you wrap her. You carry her out the back, the priest opening the door just wide enough for you to pass. No one follows. The merchant doesn't look up. His wife has become your burden now. She's lighter than you expected. You take her to the chapel yourself, after dark. There's no cart, no procession, no neighbours murmuring psalms. You lay her in the freshly dug hole beside the mason, say nothing, and begin covering her with soil. The priest stands nearby, mumbling his Latin faster than usual, skipping whole passages. When he finishes, he leaves without a word. You're still smoothing the earth when the moon rises. The next day, there are whispers. The merchant hasn't come out of his house. The boy who tends his shop says he heard coughing through the shutters. Then nothing. You're asked to bring food to the door. You leave it on the step and knock twice. No one answers. That afternoon, a second death. An old woman who helped prepare Marjorie's body for burial. She collapses in the square, clutching her chest, and dies before they can carry her inside. You arrive to find her still twitching, eyes bloodshot, her mouth stained with bile. You recognise the same black splotches blooming under her skin. The townsfolk are less quiet now. They speak in urgent tones, clutching rosaries and herbs, dabbing vinegar under their noses. The baker's wife walks around with a pouch of lavender pressed to her lips. The apothecary nails a sign to his door and refuses to open for anyone. The priest prays more often, but faster still, like he's trying to finish before something arrives. You bury the old woman beside the merchant's wife. This time, there's no priest. He says he's unwell. You begin to wonder if he's just afraid. By the third day, the merchant's house is silent. Someone dares look through the back window. They find him slumped over a chair, shirt soaked, skin dark. His tongue is black. You're summoned again. When you arrive, they hand you a cloth and tell you not to touch your face, as if that's all it takes, as if cloth stops death. You drag his body out alone. He's heavier than his wife. The fluids have pulled in strange places. His fingers are curled into his palms, like he was trying to hold something in. You don't wrap him. You don't have time. The grave waits. That night, you dream of her face, the merchant's wife. Her eyes open, her mouth moving without sound. When you wake, your hands are clenched tight enough to leave crescents in your palms. You rinse them in vinegar, not because it will help, just because it gives you something to do. By week's end, there are 5 more. The washerwoman, the stable hand, 2 children from the same cottage, their mother missing, a beggar found beneath the bridge, already swarming with insects. You bury them quickly. There's no longer any talk of waiting for rites, no candles, no processionals, just bodies and the holes you dig for them. The earth is harder now, some are beginning to dry it. You crack through the topsoil with your heel, then dig with the short spade when your back begins to ache. You start layering lime between corpses, not because it helps, it doesn't, not really, but because people expect you to. They want the illusion of order, of cleanliness, even as the flies breed in the wounds and the air grows thick with heat and decay. You notice a change in the way people look at you. Not pity, not disdain. Fear. They don't say it, but you know what they think. You touch the dead. You carry them. Breathe their air. You're a vector now, an extension of the plague. They step further back when you pass. No one nods anymore. Even the priest keeps his distance. You catch him watching you once, from the chapel steps, eyes narrowed as if trying to see the sickness clinging to your skin. But it's not on your skin, not yet. It's in the air, in the dirt, in the cloth you wrap around your mouth and discard after every burial. You wash your clothes in boiling water, scrub your hands raw. You whisper old prayers your mother taught you, ones you thought you'd forgotten. You mutter them while digging, like charms. It doesn't help. The smell stays, it clings to your fingernails, to your breath, to the corners of your house. It's not just rot, not just death. It's the smell of something unnatural, something wrong. The smell of a world unravelling thread by thread, and the knowing that you'll be the one to bury every piece of it. You sleep with the shovel beside your bed now. You tell yourself it's for protection, but really, it's because you don't know when they'll call again. And they will call again. They always do. The baker's boy dies mid-loaf. One moment he's covered in flour, humming tunelessly, hands deep in the dough. The next he's gasping in the corner, his limbs stiffening, sweat rolling down his cheeks in rivulets. The baker shouts for help, but no one goes near. By the time you arrive, summoned not by name but with a nod and a pointed finger, the boy's already cold, mouth open, back arched. There's a patch of black blooming across his neck, just under the jawline, and his fingers are curled into claws, stiff with death. You bury him behind the shop, not in the churchyard. There's already whispering about who deserves sacred ground and who doesn't. The baker offers you a coin, but doesn't meet your eye. You take it anyway. There's no time for pride. 2 days later, the miller's daughter follows. She was only 13. They say her breath rattled like dry leaves, that she screamed for hours before she went still. When you come to fetch her, her mother clutches the doorway, pressing rosemary to her lips and sobbing into the stems. The girl is already covered with a sheet, as if that might stop the rot from spreading. It doesn't. Her skin has turned waxy, papery around the eyes. You carry her out as gently as you can, but her mother still wails like you've stolen her. The town begins to fray, quietly at first. People walk faster, speak less. Coins pass hands with gloves now, or with bits of cloth in between. No one lingers in the square. Market stalls empty out, their fruit left to shrivel in the sun. The smith sharpens fewer blades. The brewer locks his barrels. Everyone watches everyone else, like they're waiting for someone to cough. The church says it is God's punishment. For what? They won't say aloud, but you can guess. Pride maybe, lust, the way the mayor's son used to sneak out after dark, the way the girls at the inn laugh too freely. Maybe it's for your own sins, though you struggle to name them. You dig holes, you bury the dead. You never ask for more than your coin. If God disapproves, he hasn't said so directly. The stars, someone says, are wrong this month. There's something in their alignment. Bad humours, bad influences, a sour wind from the east. A passing monk says it's the Jews, that they've poisoned wells, that they made a pact with the devil in some far-off city. You hear this and say nothing. You've seen no devils, only men with lumps in their necks and eyes full of blood. Still the rumours grow. A friar from the next village arrives dragging a wooden cross, flagellating himself with a knotted rope, chanting Latin between sobs. He walks the streets like he's trying to bleed fast enough to outrun the plague. The townsfolk avoid him, but not too obviously. Some follow at a distance, murmuring along. Others glance at you and then away, as if the disease clings to your boots. You begin to see more charms around necks, amulets carved from bone, scraps of parchment etched with shaky prayers, feathers tied to belts. People press coins to saints' statues with trembling hands. A few rub dirt from the chapel floor on their cheeks. You watch this from across the square, leaning on your shovel, and wonder what any of it will stop. Others flee. The tanner's family disappears overnight, cart packed and gone by dawn. A young woman from the tailor's household bolts into the hills barefoot, screaming about mists and demons. The blacksmith boards up his windows. The innkeeper starts turning people away, even if they have coin. Especially if they cough. You stay, not because you're brave, not because you think it won't reach you, but because someone has to stay. Someone has to bury the bodies. And there are more of them now. 2 or 3 each day, then 4, then 5. At first you keep digging separate graves. You mark them with stakes, a rough tally to keep track. But the churchyard is running out of space and no one has time for headstones. Soon you start burying them, 2 to a hole. Then 3. You cover them in lime and keep your mouth shut. No one asks questions. No one wants to know who went in which hole. The mayor falls ill on a Thursday. He's seen less lately, his usual speeches and inspections replaced by vague notices pinned to door frames. You hear he took to his bed with fever and a terrible cough. The next morning the bell tolls once and never again. The ringer is gone. The priest offers no public mass. There's no funeral. You bury the mayor in his own orchard, under a tree that hasn't borne fruit in years. His wife doesn't come outside. The priest is drunk more often than not. You pass him one evening, slumped beside the chapel, flask dangling from his fingers. He's weeping. You don't stop. You've seen him drunk before. Now he's just drunk longer. He still says the rites when he remembers. He still blesses the dead. Quickly, sloppily, without conviction. The psalms slur together. He drops the incense once and doesn't bother to retrieve it. You step over the cinders on your way out. The town's rhythm changes. No more Sunday bells, no more laughter in the square. The children don't chase chickens through the alleyways anymore. They stay inside, or they don't stay at all. You begin to hear coughing through walls, scratchy, ragged sounds in the night, followed by sudden silence. You grow used to being called in the early hours. A knock, a nod, a body, a shallow grave before breakfast. Sometimes they try to hide the dead. You understand. There's fear in the air now, of the plague, of the church, of each other. You find a young man stiff in a chair, behind a locked door, his sister trembling and barefoot, eyes wide as you carry him out. She doesn't cry, just rocks back and forth, gripping a rosary until her fingers bleed. The apothecary hangs garlic from his eaves. A merchant burns sage in the street, chanting verses in a language you don't recognise. A group of mothers gathers in the square at dusk, walking in circles with candles and wet rags tied over their mouths. The rags turn brown by the time the wind picks up. You wonder if it's the air that kills, or the fear. You eat less, not out of superstition, but because your stomach turns too often now. The smell clings to your clothes, sweet and metallic, thick and sour, the scent of flesh that has decided it no longer wants to hold together. You strip down outside your cottage each night and wash in cold water by lantern light, scrubbing until your skin cracks. It doesn't help. The smell stays. The graveyard grows cluttered. Your neat rows blur into one another. You lose track. Names slip from your mind as soon as you write them in the ledger. You tear out the pages, burn them, and stop pretending they matter. One evening, you walk through the main lane and realise you can hear your own footsteps. Not just faintly, but fully, clearly. The way they echo against stone. The way your breathing seems louder than it should. The shops are shut. The shutters closed. Smoke curls from only a handful of chimneys. You pass a basket of rotting apples, left abandoned outside a door. No one has taken them. No one will. You pause near the well. There's a smear of red on the edge of the stone. Not fresh, not old, just there. The wind shifts. You smell burning, not wood, not meat, something in between. You keep walking, because there are still bodies to bury, and someone must stay. You've dug 12 graves in 2 days. That's more than you'd expect in a season, let alone a stretch of hours blurred together by sweat and stench. Your back is knotted like rope. Your palms are red and cracked. Your fingernails are black where they haven't snapped clean off. You don't count the bodies anymore. Not properly. Only the holes. Only the ones deep enough to matter. The ones where the dirt doesn't slide back in on itself, like it's trying to keep what's beneath from staying there. The ground fights you. Where it's not hard as stone, it's soaked through from the last storm. Graves fill with muddy water faster than you can bail them. One collapses before the corpse is in. The walls crumbling like wet bread. You curse aloud for the first time in days. Loudly. No one hears you. Or if they do, they don't care. No one cares what the gravedigger shouts into the earth. Your assistant, a lad from the alehouse who once bragged about his strong back and sturdy legs, stops showing up by the third day. You don't blame him. You wouldn't want to be you either. He had kind eyes, a soft jaw, and the kind of fear that clung to him like damp wool. The last time you saw him, he was retching behind the chapel, clutching a bundle of herbs to his chest and muttering something about devils in the air. You asked him to hold a lantern. He shook his head. You didn't ask again. Now you dig alone. You carry alone. You drag limbs stiff with death through alleyways slick with refuse, and try not to think about what's leaking from them. You wrap the bodies when you can, but the cloth runs out quickly, and the church won't spare any more linen. Eventually, you resort to cloaks, curtains, tablecloths, anything not too stiff with old blood. You learn to lift from the hips, to twist with your knees, to stop flinching when something breaks inside the bundle. You stop praying, not deliberately, not in defiance, just gradually, like forgetting a song you used to know. The words no longer come when you bend to the dirt. You mutter instead. Mutter and grunt and sigh, and once or twice you laugh, short and bitter, because there's nothing else to do when a body splits open mid-lift and spills half-digested food across your boots. The lime burns your hands. It always has, but now your skin is thinner, more raw. You try gloves once, old leather ones from a tanner's discarded pack, but they harden with blood and fall apart by nightfall. You bury them with the rest. You bury everything now. The townspeople grow scarce. Even the ones still breathing avoid your eyes. They don't thank you. They don't offer coin. They simply point, sometimes from behind shutters, and leave the door unlocked. You enter quietly, as if the dead might be sleeping. Sometimes they are still warm. You try not to think about that. You've taken to marking the pits with stones now. Small ones, arranged in clusters, since crosses rot and wooden stakes snap in the wind. You used to write names. You used to try. But now the names blur. A John becomes a Thomas becomes a girl you can't place. The ledger is gone, soaked through in a rainstorm that flooded your roof. You threw the pages in the hearth and watched the ink run black across the fire. The priest appears less and less. Once he tried to bless a row of bodies before you lowered them, but he fumbled the psalm and dropped the incense onto a child's face. He cried that night in the chapel, loud enough for the whole square to hear. The next day, his door was locked. You haven't seen him since. Your shovel breaks mid-stroke on a patch of frozen clay. You toss it aside and use your hands. You dig with fists and fingers until the blood runs from your knuckles and mixes with the soil. When you stand again dizzy, the hole is shallow but enough. It has to be enough. A woman collapses outside the churchyard wall as you finish covering a pair of servants. She dies within minutes. Her husband stands back, holding their baby, both of them silent. You don't speak. You don't offer comfort. You simply nod once, carry her into the grave she didn't ask for, and press the soil down gently over her cheek. You start to hum sometimes. Nothing tuneful, just sound to fill the hours. When you stop humming, the silence stretches. Too wide, too heavy. You fill it again, with curses or muttering, or the rhythmic grind of your spade. Anything but stillness. You begin to feel the weight in your chest. Not illness, not yet, but something like pressure, like stones stacked inside you. You sleep less. Eat only what you can hold with one hand. The bread is always stale, the cheese always bitter. Sometimes you don't notice. Sometimes you chew bark and don't realise until it splits in your teeth. Your house smells of lye and rot. The water you boil each night barely masks it. You scrub yourself with ashes and vinegar. You scrape under your nails with a knife. Still, the smell lingers. In your clothes, in your hair, in the creases at your wrists. You wake in the night and think it's the walls that stink, until you lift your arms and realise it's you. You bury a man who once bought you a drink. You don't remember his name. He had a scar on his temple and a habit of scratching behind his ear when he lied. You find him curled beside his doorstep, flies already nesting in his mouth. You cover his face before lifting him. He falls apart anyway. You tie what's left of him in his own cloak and carry him like a sack of barley. The crows have grown bold. They wait on the chapel roof, watching. Sometimes they follow you to the pits. One lands beside you as you dig and picks at the dirt. You try to chase it once. It doesn't move, just tilts its head and waits. You leave it be after that. One evening, they bring you a wheelbarrow, a rickety thing, more splinter than structure, dragged by a man with no shoes and wild eyes. In it lie 3 small bodies, arranged side by side, like loaves of bread cooling after the oven. The man says nothing. He simply gestures once, mouth trembling, and stumbles away. You stare down at the children. 2 girls, 1 boy. Matching faces, matching sores, matching stillness. One clutches a scrap of cloth that might have been a doll. You bend to lift them one by one and find they're still warm, still soft. The wheelbarrow creaks behind you as you carry them to the graveyard. You dig a single hole, wide, deep as your hands will go before the light fails. The sun bleeds into the treetops, casting long shadows across the grass. You work until your fingers tremble, until your arms shake with each stroke. You line the grave with straw. You place the children inside gently, as if they might wake. You do not speak. You do not pray. You cover them slowly, packing the dirt down smooth. You mark the grave with 5 stones, 3 small, 2 large, for what you buried, for what you lost, for what you are losing, piece by piece, with every grave you dig. One day, you learn the churchyard is full. That simple spoken fact lands harder than you expect. You're told by the sexton, who shrugs as if it were merely an inconvenience, like a spoiled batch of candles or a broken roof tile. But it isn't. There's no more ground to give, no more room between the crooked stones and sagging crosses. You walk the length of it at dawn and see only fresh mounds, each one still soft, some of them still steaming from the night before. The air is thick with the perfume of rot and wet linen. The paths have turned to mud under the weight of too many feet. The grass, once patchy but green, is now trampled flat and slick with runoff from the graves. The worms have fattened. They ask you where else they can go. You don't answer. Not immediately. You stare at the edges of the yard, at the low walls and the tilting boundary stones, and you think, there's nowhere left that isn't already dying. That afternoon you take your shovel beyond the town's edge, past the last barn and the split-rail fence that borders the far field. There's a rise just beyond it, sloping gently down into a hollow where brambles grow and birds used to nest. You find a patch where the soil seems loose, though still damp from yesterday's rain. You plant the point of your blade into the earth and press down with your boot. The dirt resists, but it yields, barely. You begin to dig. The hole is not like the others. It isn't for a single man, not even for 3. This one must be wide, deep, a mouth in the ground, hungry and growing. There will be no markers, no names, no prayers, just earth and flesh and the heavy, sickening press of necessity. At first it's just you, 1 man, 1 shovel, 1 slow descent into the belly of the field. You work until your arms burn and your legs shake, until your tunic clings to your back, and your breath comes in short, wheezing gasps. You stop only to drink, to piss, and to swat at the flies that gather even before the bodies arrive. They come soon enough. 2 lads with a cart, both young, both silent, bring the first load. 4 wrapped corpses, barely secured, slumped atop each other like broken dolls. One slips off as they reach the edge and hits the ground with a sickening thud. The younger boy retches. The older one glares at you like it's your fault the corpse is heavier than rope. You say nothing. Just haul it to the edge of the pit and roll it in. There is no ceremony now, no hush of reverence, no moments of silence, just the dull thump of bodies landing on bodies and the scrape of dirt over flesh. Soon, more carts come, some pulled by men you know, others by men who will be dead before the week is out. Some wear cloth over their mouths, some wear nothing at all. One man wears a necklace of garlic and a painted charm that does nothing but swing uselessly as he tips his burden into the pit. You watch as a girl's braid comes loose mid-fall, black hair fanning out like a question, before vanishing beneath the others. The grave fills quickly, too quickly. You widen it, you deepen it. When you can't go any farther down, you start a second, then a third. You dig until your muscles twitch in protest and the skin splits at the base of your thumbs. The blisters become calluses. The calluses become numb. You no longer feel the shovel's weight in your hands, only the cold when you stop. They bring more now, not just the poor, not just the forgotten. A magistrate's wife, a merchant's mother, a friar with his robes still soaked in incense and bile. They are all the same in death. They all rot the same way. One afternoon, as the sun leans westward and the sky turns the colour of rust, a man you don't know wheels a barrow up the path. In it, a bundle. Small. Too small. He's crying but not making sound. Just wetness on his face, streaking down through a layer of dust. He doesn't unwrap the child, just lifts the bundle and holds it out to you like an offering. You take it without a word, step to the edge, and as you tip the child into the pit, the cloth shifts. The little legs kick. Once, just once. A reflex maybe, maybe not. You look away. You don't look back. That night, you drink more than usual. The ale is thin and sour, but it numbs the edges of your thoughts. You lie on your cot staring at the rafters, listening to the creak of wood and the distant bark of a dog that hasn't stopped for days. You wonder if the child was alive. You wonder if it matters. You wonder how many more you'll bury breathing. You dream of hands reaching up from the pit, grey, bloated, nails cracked, fingers twitching. They grab your ankles and pull, not out of malice, but need, desperation. You wake with your legs tangled in the blanket and a shout caught in your throat. You stop sleeping after that. The next morning, the town council, what's left of it, sends word that the pit is now official. Approved, they say, as if the ground needed their permission, as if the dead care. You're given 3 more assistants, though only one lasts the week. The others vanish like the boy from the alehouse, whether to the hills or to the pit themselves. You're never told. You're told to keep records. You don't. Not anymore. A tally won't stop the stench. There are no funerals now, no sermons, no mourning garb. People carry their dead in silence, leave them at the edge of the field, and walk away without looking back. You once saw a man leave a bunch of daisies on a body's chest. They withered before you could shovel the first clod. You wonder what God thinks of this. You wonder if he's even watching. You dig faster, you dig deeper. The priest dies screaming. It's not sudden, not like some. He lingers days longer than he should have, coughing and sweating, staining his bedding with pus and bile until the smell creeps out from the manse and down the chapel steps. You hear it before you're summoned. You've buried dozens by now, hundreds even, but this one you dread. Not because you liked him, you didn't, but because he was the last one holding a thread to God. He dies at midnight, they say, screaming in Latin half wrong and hoarse, the words slurring into pleas that turn into moans, that turn into silence. You aren't there. You find out the next morning, when the bell doesn't toll, no morning chime, no summons for mass, just the wind pressing through the rafters and the quiet thump of something heavy being dragged behind a door. They ask you to take his body, not to bury him. He's already stiff, laid out beneath the altar, in robes that stink of sweat and spoiled wine, but to make space, they need the chapel floor. Not for worship, for storage. The pews have already been shoved aside and the candles snuffed. They're stacking the dead inside now, in rows, some wrapped, most not. You do what's asked. You pull him from the altar, wrap him in a tattered tapestry, and haul him through the square without ceremony. His skin has turned the colour of dried parchment. His jaw hangs open, as though still trying to speak. You don't let him. The grave you give him is shallow, not out of malice, just because the ground is too cold that morning, and your shovel has a crack near the handle. You pack the soil over him with your heel, then press a stone into place and walk away without looking back. After that, there is no mass, no prayers, no sacraments. The chapel belongs to the flies now. The pulpit is stained dark with something you hope is wine. The pews reek of blood and oil. You don't go inside anymore. You wait outside, collect the corpses they leave by the door, and carry them to the pit with the same numbness. You give to everything else. The villagers have begun to speak of sins, not their own, always someone else's. A girl with red hair is dragged into the square and accused of laying with demons. You know her, or knew her. She once gave you bread when no one else would. She screamed until the smoke took her. No one tried to stop it. Not even the council, especially not the council. That same evening, you see a man kneeling before the chapel steps, flaying the skin from his back with a knotted cord. His shirt lies in the dirt beside him, soaked through. His mouth moves constantly, but no sound comes out, only breath, thick and ragged. Blood streaks his spine in long, trembling lines. The next morning, there are 3 more, then 10. They come with banners, black cloth with white crosses stitched in crude lines. Their leader wears a hood. His feet are bare. They walk through town in silence, pausing only to kneel and beat themselves bloody, crying out to God between the lashes. They sing sometimes, high and cracked, voices wobbling like broken bells. You don't speak to them. You don't need to. Their eyes are already halfway to the grave. The children watch from behind shuttered windows. The ones still alive. The rest are already in the pit. No one keeps time anymore. The days blur. There is no Sunday, no feasts, no holy days, only sky and soil, and the constant ache of your own bones. You begin to forget what month it is. You stop counting how many you've buried. Your shovel moves with its own will now, your hands blistered beyond sensation. You sleep with your boots on. You wake before the sun. Sometimes, you wake because something in your dreams is still calling your name. Once you dreamed of fire raining from the sky. Another time, of a child reaching for your hand just as you filled the grave. Last night, you dreamed of the priest. Not how he died, but how he stared at you once, when you asked him if the dead could still feel pain. In the dream, he didn't answer. He just smiled. Wide, too wide. You eat when you remember, sometimes not at all. The food left at your doorstep grows less frequent. One day, there's only a lump of bread and a wilted turnip. You chew them slowly, staring at the wall. The firewood's gone. You don't bother fetching more. The cold helps keep the smell down. You hear more rumours, that London has fallen, that the King's Court is in retreat, that bodies lie stacked in the river, like cordwood, floating belly up in the tide. Someone claims Paris is burning. Someone else says the Pope has locked himself inside a ring of fire. You believe none of it. You believe all of it. The truth doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that the dead keep coming. You no longer bother wrapping them unless they leak. You drag them in 2s and 3s now, hoisting them over your shoulders like sacks of grain. The ones too far gone, too bloated to lift, you roll onto tarps and pull behind you like sledges. You use boards as ramps. You grease them with ash. You build simple chutes to speed the drop into the pit. You dig as the flagellants scream. Their cries echo down the lanes, mingling with the sobs of the mothers and the moans of the dying. The wind carries everything. Stench, sound, despair. You bury it all. A girl dies in the square, just collapses mid-step. Her eyes are open, staring upward like she sees something no one else can. No one moves to help. No one speaks. After a while, someone drags her to the side of the road. You collect her at dusk. Her hands are cold and clean. One morning you find a note nailed to your door. A prayer. Not to Christ, not to Mary, to death. It's been written in charcoal and childlike scrawl. You don't recognise the handwriting. You burn it without reading the rest. Your hands begin to shake when you sleep. Your dreams come faster. You feel something building behind your ribs, like a weight, like a breath you can't release. You wonder if it's grief, or rage, or if it's simply the echo of too many corpses piled in your memory. Someone says the end is near. Someone else says it's already happened, and we're all just too stubborn to notice. The next day, the flagellants return. More of them this time. 20, maybe 30. Some with open wounds crawling with flies. Some with tears streaming silently down their cheeks. They bleed into the dust with faces like wax and voices cracking with each blow. You watch them pass, then you turn and go back to digging. You begin burying after dark, not because you're asked to, but because it's easier that way. Fewer eyes, fewer questions, no sobbing mothers or stiff-backed elders watching as you tip their kin into a hole too shallow and too wide. No one to whisper behind their palms or stare too long at the way you move, as if they expect to see death clinging to your skin. The night is quieter. Only the wind watches, and the dogs. The work hasn't slowed. If anything, it's worse now. The bodies come bloated and bent, soft where they shouldn't be, stiff where they should bend. The rot sets in faster. You used to flinch when a limb bent backward or a jaw fell open mid-lift. You used to gag when fluid seeped through the wrappings and onto your wrists. Now you barely notice. The stench is part of you. You carry it with you like breath. Rats watch you work. They sit on the pit's edge, bold as crows, their beady eyes reflecting your lantern light like coins. One chews on something in the grass. A finger, maybe. You don't stop it. You don't have time. The pit is half full, and there's another load coming before dawn. The dead are heavier these days. Maybe it's the heat. Maybe it's the way they're kept longer now, stuffed into cellars or dragged from homes days after their last breath. One slips from your grip as you lower him in. The cloth rips. He hits the earth and splits open, the contents of his guts spilling across your boots with a wet, sucking sound. You step in it. You don't react. You scrape your heel in the dirt and keep digging. The torchlight throws long shadows over the ground. Your shovel's edge glints now and then, just enough to remind you it's still metal, and not an extension of your arm. You move without thinking. Dig, haul, tip, cover, again, again, again. The dogs howl just before midnight, not the bark of warning, but the long, keening wail that scrapes at your spine. One stands at the far end of the field, silhouetted against the stars. Head raised. You wonder if it can smell what you've buried, or what you haven't yet. You lose track of the days. You think it might be Thursday, but the market hasn't opened in a week, and the bell hasn't rung in longer. Your lanterns burn lower each night. You've begun using scraps of fat-soaked cloth when oil runs dry. They smoke too much and make your eyes sting, but they keep the rats at bay, mostly. Sometimes you sing. Not songs, really, just strings of words with no meaning, old rhymes you learned as a boy. You don't remember where. They keep your mind steady, like lines scratched into the mud before a trench. You hum as you drag a wrapped bundle across the grass. You mutter as you toss in a pair of boots still attached to swollen legs. You whisper nothing in particular as you shovel dirt over a face that never had a name. A boy comes to you one night, thin, maybe 12, eyes like old glass. He says there's a cart stuck by the stream, too heavy for his father to lift. You follow him through the dark, past the chapel, through the trees. The cart is real. So are the bodies, 4 of them. One is his mother. He doesn't cry, just helps you lift her. His hands shake, but he doesn't drop her. You bury them together. He watches. You offer to walk him home, but he says, "No one left." You leave him by the fire near the chapel steps. In the morning he's gone. The pit groans now. That's the only word for it. When the wind moves just right, you swear you hear the sound of shifting weight below the surface, like bodies turning in sleep. You know it's just the soil settling, but still, you sleep lighter these days, when you sleep at all. One evening you find a bundle wrapped in fine wool left at the pit's edge. No note, no name, just the smell. You bend to lift it, and something in your chest tightens. The scent is familiar. Lavender soap, honey, the faintest trace of rose oil. You peel the cloth back slightly, just enough to see the face. Your breath leaves you. You know her, you knew her, once, a long time ago, before the graves, before the pit. She lived 2 houses down from yours. You shared apples as children. She once kissed your cheek in a barn and laughed when you blushed. You hadn't spoken in years, not since she married, but you knew her smile, her laugh, her voice. Now she's blackened, bloated, her lips cracked and peeling, one eye half open, as if in accusation. Her hands are curled into her chest, fingers stiff and dry. The wool is damp with seepage. She slips from your grip like wet cloth, landing with a sound you'll hear again in your dreams. You stand over the pit and stare down at her. She's just another body now, no different than the rest. But your hands won't move. You sink to your knees. The dirt is cold. You don't cry, you want to, but the tears won't come. The wind rises, it carries the sound of distant wailing. Human, animal, you can't tell anymore. You stare at the bodies in the pit, stacked like firewood. Limbs tangled, mouths open. Somewhere near the bottom someone shifts. Not truly. Just settling. Just gravity. Still, you flinch. You stand slowly. Your knees ache. Your palms are raw. You pick up the shovel and begin to cover her. Gently, like it matters. The rats scatter as the soil falls. The dogs keep howling. You don't look up. Sometime later, you walk through the town square, and it's nearly silent. Not quiet in the peaceful sense, not like before storms or at dawn when the air still holds its breath. This silence is different, heavy, stale. It lingers behind doors and curls around corners. It waits. No market stalls line the path anymore. The awnings have rotted and collapsed, and the tables have been stripped for firewood or overturned and left to warp in the rain. Cracked apples lie in the dirt. A loaf of bread moulds slowly on a doorstep, untouched. You pass shuttered homes. Some are bolted from the inside. Others have been locked from the outside. The doors nailed shut by neighbours too frightened to risk opening them again. One house still has a smear of red on the doorframe, hastily scrawled. A warning or a plea. You're not sure anymore. A cracked window lets out the smell of old sickness and soured milk. No one opens it. Looters have come and gone. You see their footprints in the mud, smashed glass beneath a window ledge, broken crockery tossed aside like bones. Someone's taken the blacksmith's tools and left his body where it fell, half curled in the forge's doorway. His apron is still on. His arms are streaked with burns. You stare for a moment, then step around him. He'll be added to the pit before nightfall, same as the others. Chickens roam through empty homes now, pecking at crumbs beneath sagging tables. You spot a goat in the weaver's kitchen, nosing through a sack of spilled grain. A cow stands tethered outside the tavern, ribs visible through its hide, tail twitching weakly at flies. It moos once, softly. You glance at the bucket near its hooves, empty and dry. You keep walking. No one cries anymore. Grief has thinned into something else, something quieter, a hollowing out. You see it in the eyes of the few who still wander the lanes, shoulders hunched, mouths covered, eyes darting like prey too tired to run. They don't speak when you pass. They don't even look up. Just keep moving, always away from wherever you are. You see fewer candles in windows, fewer signs of life. The little things that once marked the difference between living and merely surviving. Fresh bread left out to cool, the sound of music from behind a door, laughter in the distance, are gone. It's as though the town itself has stopped trying. You find a boy asleep on a stoop, thin as a rail, arms wrapped around his knees. His lips are cracked, his fingers twitch in his dreams. You don't wake him. There's nothing you could offer. You check the door behind him, locked, no one inside. You leave him a crust of bread from your pouch and walk on. You pass the manor house on your way to the chapel. The gates are open. The servants' quarters look abandoned. The windows on the east wing are dark. But as you round the hedge, you hear the wheels, sharp and grating on the cobbles. A noble's carriage lurches out of the drive, drawn by 2 skittish horses, the driver whipping them hard despite the mud. Curtains flap in the breeze, and behind them you glimpse pale hands, drawn faces, coughing mouths, pressed into cloth. No one waves, no one thanks. The gate swings shut behind them with a finality that feels colder than the wind. At the chapel, the doors are wide now, no point in closing them. Inside, the pews are gone, stripped for fuel. The altar is bare. The floor is covered in bodies, wrapped, unwrapped, half covered, some fresh, some not. You step around them as you retrieve your tools, careful not to look at the faces for too long. They blur together now. Mouths open, eyes dry, limbs twisted into impossible angles. You bury 3 before the sun hits its highest point. A man with missing fingers. A woman in a dress that was once red. A boy with a wooden toy still clutched in one hand. You don't ask who they were. No one tells you. The pit is nearly full again. You started a new one yesterday, just a few yards over. The earth there is looser, easier to dig, but the smell rises faster. It clings to your clothes, your hair, your tongue, even after washing, even after scrubbing your hands until the skin peels. It's in you now. You know it. The dogs don't howl as often anymore. They've grown quiet, like the people, like the houses. The birds too have moved on. You miss them in a strange way. Their absence is louder than their song ever was. That evening they bring you 6 more. No names given. Just wrapped bodies, 2 men, 1 woman, 3 children, bundled in sheets and laid out in a handcart. The man pushing it looks too old for the work. His hands tremble as he lifts each form and hands them off. You take them silently, lowering them into the earth one by one. The children are light, too light. You wonder when they last ate, if they knew what was happening, if they died afraid. You hope not. You know they probably did. The sun dips low as you finish, the shadows grow long. You press the dirt down gently over the last of them. Your shovel moving slower now. Your muscles ache, not from the work, but from the constant, grinding repetition. There is no satisfaction in a finished grave, only the certainty that more are coming. You place a stone at the head of the pit, not to mark who lies there, just to say someone did this, that they weren't entirely forgotten. Then you sit, just for a moment, on the edge of the field. The grass whispers in the wind. The village behind you is quiet. Too quiet. You close your eyes and listen for something. Anything. But hear only the rustle of weeds and the distant scrape of rats in the chapel floorboards. You wonder how long the silence will last, and what it will take to fill it. You vomit on yourself before you've even seen the body. Just the door cracking open is enough. The waft of warm, stale air that hits your face like steam from a butcher's bucket. You stagger back into the mud and double over, hands on your knees, retching until there's nothing left but bile and spit. It stings your throat, your nose, your eyes. You wipe your face with your sleeve, but it's no use. The smell clings to everything. You thought you were used to it. You thought, after weeks of hauling rot and blood and worse from cellar steps and chapel floors, that your stomach had hardened. But this is different. This is worse. The smell isn't just in the room, it is the room. Soaked into the beams, pressed into the rugs, clinging to the walls like damp. You can't tell where the corpse begins and the house ends. You force yourself through the door. You always do. Inside it's dark and close and unbearably still. The shutters are nailed shut. A single candle burns low on the mantel, wax pooled in long, neglected rivers. You move slowly, squinting through the haze. You find her in the back room, slumped against the wall, her chin resting on her chest, like she's dozed off in a chair that no longer exists. The floor beneath her is black and wet. Her dress has fused to her skin. You don't try to move her, not yet. Instead, you stand in the doorway and breathe through your sleeve, though it barely helps. You count backward from 10, then from 20, then from 50. Eventually, you kneel and begin to work. When you drag her out into the air, the flies come before you reach the threshold. They swarm her mouth, her hands, your face. You keep your lips sealed and blink hard as you lay her down on the sledge. You cover her as best you can and tie the cloth tight. But it doesn't matter. The stench has already followed you. It follows you everywhere now. You smell it in the chapel in your cottage, in the bread you eat with shaking hands. You smell it in the wind, even when the air is clean. You dip your arms in vinegar and ashes, scrub them until the skin goes raw, and still you can't rid yourself of it. You wake in the night with the scent in your mouth like smoke. You taste it in the back of your throat. You dream of drowning in it. You smell death on clean things now, on your water, on the grass, in the folds of your blanket. You catch it in the sweet things too, in apples, in honey, in the strange scent of old soap. You begin to wonder if you're imagining it. You begin to wonder if your nose has gone wrong, if your mind has followed. The flies don't care either way. They are everywhere, thicker now, bolder. You find them crawling under your sleeves, settling in the corners of your eyes, laying eggs in your boots. The maggots come next. You find them in the folds of linen, in the hems of clothes, wriggling at the edges of burial cloths. One morning, you shake your tunic and a cluster drops from the collar. You check your scalp in the reflection of a tin cup. Nothing. Not yet. You stop changing clothes, there's no point. No one sees you anymore, and the dead don't care. You sleep in what you wear. You eat with blood on your hands. You carry the shovel in your left now, because the right arm has begun to shake. You speak less. Not out loud, not to anyone. There's no one to speak to. Only the corpses and their terrible listeners. Still you begin to speak to them. It starts as muttering, simple acknowledgements as you lift a shoulder or wrap a leg, then apologies for the jostling, for the cold, for not digging as deep as you should have. You say sorry when they slip from your arms. You say sorry when the cloth comes loose and something falls out. You say sorry when you forget their names. You begin to name them. At first it's the ones you remember. People from the village, a butcher, a midwife, a man who gave you directions once. You whisper their names as you lower them into the pit. Sometimes you repeat them. 3 times, 5 times, until the sound becomes meaningless, until the wind carries it off. Then come the ones you never knew. You name them anyway. Simple names, gentle ones. You call a boy Thomas, though he could have been a Daniel. You call a woman Agnes, even though her hands are too small and her shoes too fine. You name the child you bury in a cooking pot after your sister, though you haven't seen her in years. You stop trying to remember why. One night, while lifting a body from a cart, you wipe your brow and your hand comes away stained. Not with sweat, not with soil, but with something thicker, darker. You bring it close to the lantern. It's red. Red paint, your mind says. Not blood, not yet. You don't remember being cut. You don't feel pain. Still, you stand for a long time, staring at your palm, wondering if it's yours. The body slips as you lower it. It rolls onto its side, arms flopping loose like a puppet. You blink, and for a moment, it looks like it's reaching for you. You take a step back. You don't sleep that night. You sit on the edge of your cot, shovel across your lap, eyes fixed on the door. The wind moans through the cracks in the wood. A rat scurries across the floor and vanishes under the hearth. The candle gutters low. You whisper a name, any name, and try not to think of the hand that reached for yours. The next morning, you burn your tunic in the field. The fire barely catches. The smoke smells like skin. You walk to the pit with your arms bare and your feet aching. The sun doesn't rise so much as creep upward behind a sheet of grey. Your breath fogs before your lips. You mutter again as you walk, not for comfort, but for habit. At the pit, the flies swarm in clouds thick enough to darken the air. The edge of the trench is slick with old rain and loose soil. You plant your shovel, tie your cloth over your mouth, and begin again. You speak to the first corpse softly. You tell her she'll have neighbours soon. You tell her the ground is softer today. You tell her she's not alone. And for a moment, as you lower her down, you believe it. You're sent to a house to retrieve the dead. It's the smell that finds you first, stronger than usual. Not the thick rot of a single corpse or even two, but something worse, something layered. You catch it on the wind halfway down the lane, a putrid sweetness that sticks to your throat and tightens your stomach. You stop walking, just for a moment, but you know there's nowhere else to go. The cart was found outside, the gate half open. No one's come in or out in days. The house is squat and low, a single floor of whitewashed walls, now grey with grime and streaked with old rain. The shutters hang crooked. One window is broken, the glass smeared dark where someone tried to claw their way out. The front door is ajar, not wide, just enough for the stench to crawl out like smoke. You press a cloth to your face, but it does nothing. You step inside and immediately can't breathe. The air is wet, heavy. It clings to the inside of your throat, coats your teeth, fills your lungs with something rancid and wrong. The walls bleed with rot, not literally, but close enough. Dark streaks run from the ceiling corners down to the floor, where mould has taken root between the flagstones. The hearth is cold. The pot still hangs over it, long since emptied of anything living. They're everywhere. 7 bodies. You count them automatically, not because you want to, but because it's the first thing you always do. 1 near the door, face down. 1 in the corner by the hearth. 2 on the pallet bed, limbs tangled. 3 more scattered across the floor, like broken furniture. All of them rotted, all of them bloated, all of them too far gone. The child is the first you see clearly. Small, curled up on a straw mat, clutching something to her chest. A rag doll once bright, now soaked through and crawling with flies. Her mouth is open, her eyes are gone. You step over her and nearly slip in the filth that coats the floor. The man on the bed is missing most of his face, not from violence, but from time. His skin has pulled away from the bone, exposing teeth that grin up at the ceiling, like he died mid-laugh. His eyes are sunken, his throat collapsed inward. 1 arm hangs off the bed frame, fingers blackened to the wrist. You try to drag the woman beside him. She's lighter than she should be. Her body bends in the wrong places, soft and slick. The sheet wrapped around her sloughs away, with a sound like wet cloth torn in two. You try to shift her anyway, but her midsection splits under your hands, and something warm and thick spills across your boots. You drop her. You don't pick her up again. You turn toward the others, but your hands won't move. Your knees lock. Your chest tightens, and for a moment, all you can hear is the sound of the flies. That endless buzzing, high and sharp, filling the silence like screaming in a sealed room. You've buried hundreds, maybe more. You've lifted bodies from wells, from ovens, from beds soaked through with death. But this is different. This house feels like it's already been buried. The air inside so thick you half expect the walls to collapse in on themselves. It's not just death that clings to this place. It's despair. Old, deep, absolute. You stagger back from the bed, from the corner, from the small body on the straw mat. You wipe your face on your sleeve, and it comes away streaked with something red, something dark. You don't know if it's blood. You don't know if it's yours. You move toward the door without realizing. Your boots squelch in the filth. The flies follow. You step outside into the grey daylight and collapse onto the ground, beside the steps. The mud soaks through your trousers, but you don't care. You sit, you breathe. You try to forget the heat, the smell, the sound of something soft tearing in your hands. You don't go back inside. You know you should. You should fetch the sledge, wrap them, haul them out one by one, drag them to the pit, as you've done 100 times before, but your legs won't move, your arms feel hollow. The thought of touching them again, of stepping back into that house, that tomb, it's too much. So you sit. The mud creeps up your legs. The wind shifts and brings the smell back to you in full. You gag but don't vomit. There's nothing left to bring up. You stay there for what feels like hours, maybe longer. You lose track of time. The sun doesn't move. The sky stays that same dull, colourless grey. It's worn for weeks. Once or twice you hear footsteps in the lane, but no one stops. No one comes near. No one asks what you're doing. Maybe they think you're praying. Maybe they think you're resting. Maybe they don't care. Eventually the flies find you too. They crawl across your face, nestle in your hair, explore the folds of your collar. You slap at them without energy. They come back. They always come back. You glance at the house, the door is still open. The darkness inside seems deeper now, like it's watching you. You wonder what it would feel like to close the door and never open it again, to let the house keep its dead, to let the walls swallow them whole. You don't decide, you just don't move. There's a dull ache in your spine, a throb behind your eyes, a heaviness in your chest like water filling your lungs. You breathe shallowly through your mouth. The taste doesn't improve. You think about standing, about fetching the cart, about doing what must be done, but your body disagrees. It has nothing left to give, nothing left to lift or drag or bury. So you sit and shake and wait. Eventually, you stand. Not because you feel ready, but because your legs move without asking. You leave the house behind, the door still hanging open, the rot still seeping from its walls. You don't look back. There's no room left inside you for looking back. The pit waits, as it always does. You return to it without thinking, without speaking, without hope. And when the shovel bites into the earth again, something inside you gives way. Something quiet, something permanent. You dig in silence. The wind moves through the grass without sound, and your shovel breaks the soil in steady mechanical rhythm. No prayers, no names, no muttering, no humming, just motion. You work because it's what you do, because it's what's left, because stopping would mean acknowledging how much of you is already gone. You don't know how long it's been now. Days and weeks blur into each other without ceremony or distinction. The sun rises and falls like a tired eye opening and closing. You wake, you dig, you sleep. Sometimes in that order, sometimes not. Food comes when it comes. Water too. You don't ask who brings it anymore. You assume someone still does because you haven't died yet. Your hands are no longer hands. They're something else. Tools. Extensions of your will. Cracked and blackened. Lined with old blisters and cuts that never fully close. The nails have turned grey at the base and black at the tips. One falls off entirely as you grip the spade, and you barely register the pain. Blood seeps from the nail bed, but you keep digging. Your skin breaks open along the creases, wrists, elbows, the webbing between your fingers. Thin tears that sting in the wind and burn when you sweat. You wrap them in rags when you can find clean ones, but mostly you ignore them. There's no time. The pit waits. You stop eating during the day. The smell is too much. It's not just the bodies, it's you now. Your tunic reeks of decay, your hair is thick with oil and soot, and your breath tastes like something rotting behind your teeth. You chew stale bread in the dark corners of the chapel, away from the piles of the newly dead. You drink from a basin that hasn't been washed in weeks. You don't remember the last time your stomach felt full. The sore appears under your arm, sometime in the middle of a long afternoon. You notice it only because of the itch, sharp, persistent, like a splinter made of fire. You lift your arm and find a small angry lump, red and swelling fast. You touch it once, wince, and then pull your sleeve down. You don't check it again. You tell yourself it's nothing. You tell yourself a lot of things now. You whisper stories in your sleep, fragments of memories that come half-formed and incomplete. Your mother's hands, a song from the harvest festival, the smell of barley fields in summer. You wake with your fingers curled like you're still holding something warm. Then you remember where you are, what you do, and you stand and you return to the pit. You stop counting the bodies, you stop counting the days, you stop counting yourself. You fall once while digging, your foot slipping on the muddy edge of a fresh trench. You land hard, your hip cracking against a buried stone, your hand sinking wrist deep into the loose soil. You lie there for a while, face pressed into the earth, breathing in the scent of all you've buried. You don't cry, you don't scream. You just stay there, listening to the way your breath comes in shorter and shorter bursts. Eventually, you rise, you stagger, you wipe your face on your sleeve and find blood. Again, you don't know if it's yours. You start wearing your shovel like a staff, leaning on it between lifts. Your legs feel heavier each day, your feet stiff and numb. The backs of your knees ache when you bend. Your shoulders grind when you lift. You wonder if your body is rotting from the inside out. It would make sense. You've taken too much in, breathed too much, touched too much, dug too deeply. You lose time. You find yourself in the pit with no memory of how you got there. Once you wake standing upright, shovel in hand, a grave half dug before you. The sky is dark. The lantern long since burned out. You laugh once, a low rasping sound that catches in your throat. You try to sing again. An old tune, something about stars or water or saints. The words don't come, only the rhythm. You mouth it as you work. You mouth it as your hands shake. Your joints swell. Your skin grows pale and mottled. You scratch at your arms and flake away pieces that look like parchment. Your lips crack and bleed. Your tongue feels swollen in your mouth. The sore under your arm grows. It pulses. It leaks. You tear a strip of cloth and bind it tightly. Not because it helps, but because seeing it uncovered makes you feel unwell in a way that even the pit never did. You sleep in short bursts. When you wake, the sky has often changed colour. Sometimes your eyes don't focus for minutes. Sometimes you forget what day it is, or where you are, or who you were before the pit swallowed your name. You fall again. This time, it's mid-dig. Your knees give out first, collapsing like wet branches. Then your arms, shaking with the weight of the shovel, release their grip. You drop forward into the dirt. Your face hits the loose soil. You breathe it in. You taste it. You choke. You lie in the pit, not kneeling, not slumped. Not crouched in exhaustion, as you've done 100 times before. This time, you're flat on your back, staring upward, the grey sky blurred and distant. Your shovel lies a few feet away, half buried in the loose soil. You dropped it when you fell. You don't remember falling. One moment you were digging, the next you weren't. The pit is quiet. The wind doesn't reach this low. The flies hover at the edges but don't venture down, not yet. It's colder here in the trench, where the sun barely touches, and the air is thick with the exhale of so many mouths that no longer breathe. You feel the ground beneath you, soft and uneven. You feel the weight of the bodies buried days ago pressing into the soil, their forms shifting as the earth settles around them. Your shoulder brushes something cold and slick. A cloth-wrapped elbow, perhaps. A skull. You don't turn to look. Something warm is beside you. Not warm like life, but warm like something that hasn't yet cooled. A body. Fresh. You must have been digging a space for it when you collapsed. You wonder whose it is. You wonder if they knew. If they saw it coming. If they resisted, or simply lay down and waited. You hope it was the latter. You hope now that you'll be able to do the same. Your breath rattles in your chest. It's not steady. Each inhale catches. Each exhale whistles past dry lips and cracked teeth. You don't cough anymore. You don't even try. Your chest feels full, but not with air, with something heavier, something that won't come out. You close your eyes for a moment and feel the pressure shift. You open them again, and the sky is still spinning, slow and grey and uncaring. You wonder if anyone will come, if someone will stand above the pit and look down and see you lying here. If they'll climb in, check your pulse, call your name. You know they won't. No one calls your name anymore. You stopped hearing it weeks ago. Even the dying don't ask who you are. You try to sit up, but your arms don't move. Your legs are numb. You feel the weight of your own body like sand poured into a sack. You've lifted so many like this, limp, sagging, beyond their own strength. You never thought about what they felt in that moment. Now you know. You think about the sore under your arm. It burst last night, or the night before. The fever followed, then the ache, then the fall. It was never going to be anything else. You've seen it too many times to pretend otherwise. You knew it was coming the moment you first noticed the swelling. You just didn't know when. The sky darkened slightly, not from clouds, from your eyes. As you blink, it brightens again. Time stutters. You wonder if the shovel will rust where it lies, if someone will find it and know it was yours, if they'll keep using it, if they'll bother to bury you first. You hope they do, not out of vanity, just so you won't have to lie like this, open, waiting, cold. A breeze touches your cheek, then something heavier. You flinch. Dirt, just a handful. Just enough to let you know someone's there, but not for you. Not yet. You turn your head slightly, not far, just enough to see the edge of the trench, high above you. A figure leans over it, blurred by distance and fever and failing sight. They don't speak. They drop another spadeful. It lands beside your ear. You wonder for a moment if they see you, if they realise you're still breathing. You almost call out. You don't. Instead, you listen to the flies, to the dirt shifting underfoot, to your breath, to the slow, growing silence. You try to remember how many you've buried. You know the number once mattered. You kept tally marks in your head, scratched them into the wooden post beside your door. But at some point, it stopped meaning anything. You ran out of space, out of numbers, out of the strength to keep track. You try to remember names. The woman with the green shawl, the boy with the missing tooth, the priest. Did you bury the priest? You think so. You remember his robes, his jaw slack, his hands still curled around his rosary. Or maybe that was someone else. You can't be sure anymore. All the faces blur. Your own name is gone too. You search for it in the corners of your mind and find only dirt. It used to sit on your tongue like a stone. Now there's nothing. You try to summon it anyway, just to feel it one last time, just a syllable, a sound, but it slips from you. Like breath, like memory, like everything else. Your eyes close, they don't open again. You don't feel the final shovelful of dirt land on your chest. You don't hear the last words spoken over your body, if any is spoken at all. You don't sense the footsteps that walk away from the pit's edge, or the silence that settles in their wake. You forget the sky. You forget the bodies. You forget the pit. You forget yourself. And in the end, it doesn't matter, because you kept digging, until the earth welcomed you home, until your hands stopped and your breath stilled and your body sank into the very grave you'd opened for another. You won't be remembered, not by name, not by deed. No stone will bear your mark. No story will carry your voice. No one will ask who buried the town, who stayed when all others fled, who dug until he could no longer stand. But the pit will remain, and that will be enough. That brings us to the end of tonight's descent, slow rotting and quietly forgotten. If you're still awake, thank you for walking each step through filth, silence, and slow decay as someone the world never named and never missed. If you'd like early access to more of these grim history stories, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find a link to the Patreon in the description. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with other forgotten corners of history you'd like to see covered. If you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps others find their way to these stories. And special thanks to the supporters who make this show possible, including our chroniclers, Andrew S. and Amanda Lamkey. Sleep well.